Hi everyone, my name is Tristan from the CPAPstore.ca. Today we're going to be talking about what are the replacement intervals for your CPAP gear. I know there's a lot of different manufacturers saying a lot of different things. I want you to know that this is something that is a flexibility type of thing. It's not something like if you don't replace your machine every 5 years, you're gonna die, right? A lot of factors is how well you're maintaining your gear, right? How many, dogs, cats, people are in your household. How well are you cleaning everything, and then your style of mask and stuff like that. So it's not a one size fit all answer, but I'm gonna give you my opinion and our opinion on our best replacement intervals. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is something small, your filters. Okay, this is something that some manufacturers are saying you need to replace every month, or some are even saying to replace every 2 weeks. That is probably the most optimal situation of things. I know there are people who use their filters for 2 or 3 months at a time and they don't see any issues. Okay, so if you are using it or if you forgot to replace it that month and you used it for 2 months, probably not the end of the world. Okay, I do recommend hypoallergenic filters. They are a little thicker, they will collect more dust and allow your machine to work for a better period of time. Just like your car or anything that uses a filter, the cleaner air going in it will just allow it to not clog up and stuff like that. So I do recommend having hypoallergenic filters. Now, in terms of replacement period, I would say replacing it once a month is probably optimal, and every 2 months would be fine, but I wouldn't go more than every 2 months. That being said, if you have a household with a little more dust and a little more debris, for example, if you have a pet, especially if you have a pet that sleeps in your room or sleeps on your bed, multiple pets, kids, more people in the household, then in that case, I would definitely replace your filter once a month, or maybe once every 3 weeks or something like that, maybe a little less than once a month, because you're gonna have a lot of air pumping through your machine, directly into your lungs, and you wanna make sure that it's clean, and having a clean filter is probably one of the cheapest and best things you can do. For those of you who have like a household fan or a household air purifier that you leave running on, just have it running 24/7 for a month. Look how much dust and debris, gets kind of on top of it. So it's the same thing with the filters, except it's going right into your lungs. So I wouldn't skip out on replacing those filters, but it's not like end of the world if you go a month or two, okay? The next thing is a tube. Honestly, a tube you can probably keep going for a while. If you are washing your gear gently, then you can keep it going for a year, 2 years, 3 years plus. A lot of clients have it, 3-4 years, and no problems whatsoever. So I don't think that there is a requirement to replace this. I think some of the manufacturers say that they want this to be replaced every year, but we all know not everyone has the insurance for that or the money for that, right? So as long as you're keeping it clean, then it should be fine for a couple years. However, just like anything, you do get a little more peace of mind if you are replacing it once a year. Why? Because this is has a lot of heat, especially a climate line tube that has a lot of heat, a lot of moisture and stuff like that. And obviously places with a lot of moisture can fester more bacteria. And so if you're the type of person that kind of lets that kind of get out of hand, for example, you have a busy schedule, you forget to wash your tube, you go like a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks without washing your tube, then in those cases, make sure you start washing your tube more frequently. But yeah, in that case, maybe you might want to replace it every 12 months. In terms of the machine, the lifespan on a machine is generally about 5 years, which corresponds to insurance. If you don't have insurance, no reason why you can't go 8 years, 9 years with a machine. 5 years is kind of the optimal interval with it, but you can push it a little more, just like anything. The chamber though, a lot of people say that you should replace this once a year. Again, it should be able to last you a little bit longer than a year. Sometimes they do leak at the bottom seal there. If they do, sometimes it's a known issue, so look that up, see if the manufacturer says it's a known issue. In that case, they might send you one for free, but generally around a year and maybe a little bit more for the water chamber is fine. Okay, next up is the mask. Okay, the mask comes in a few different parts. You got the headgear and you got the cushion, right? So ResMed and other manufacturers say that you should replace the cushion once a month. This is generally pretty overkill, okay? I don't see a reason why you would have to replace this guy once a month, especially if you're keeping it clean. Now, in some cases, they do stretch and stuff over time, and if you're noticing leaks, then you should be replacing it. So I think you can replace a cushion if you're keeping it, in good condition. You can replace it, four times a year, but definitely not 12 times a year. That would be a little more overkill. With that being said, however, there are some masks like the ResMed AirTouch right? The air touch mask with the memory foam, which you can't really wash as well because the memory foam soaks up water and soap and stuff like that. It's a lot harder to wash. And in that case, if you're using that, you should be replacing it once a month. And at last, we have the headgear itself. The headgear, something like this, this is off an N30 mask. And it's, again, personal preference. It's based on how much oil how much sweat is in your hair, on your skin. That's gonna break down the headgear and might make it less secure and might create a leak in the mask, right? And obviously, it's kind of nice to have a nice fresh mask every once in a while, right? ResMed says that you should be replacing the headgear every 6 months. Again, this is your personal preference. Generally, this doesn't really have too much of a problem, especially if it's adjustable on your CPAP therapy. So if you find that you have good seals and stuff with the mask, then keep it. However, of course, there's a lot of oils in your hair and stuff at night, and maybe a little bit of drool or something like that, any type of liquid that's getting on the headgear. And so it is nice to replace it, I must say, if you're starting out CPAP. So you might want to replace it like once a year or something like that. Totally based on you. If you have oily skin and oily hair, then you're going to be wanting to replace it more often because it's just going to feel gross to put it on. So making sure that if you've already started CPAP therapy, you've made that investment into learning about CPAP therapy, you're going to do the right things to make sure you want to use it and not just have it just fall off. And replacing the headgear every 6 months to a year is totally fine. Now this brings me to my last tip. If you have multiple masks that you're using obviously less often, then you can replace stuff less often, of course. And therefore, we do recommend for those who have a nasal mask to get a full face mask as well. A full face mask comes really in handy when you are sick, when you have allergies, some congestion, and you're going to be breathing out of your mouth. And so if you have a full face mask and a nasal mask, of course you can, reduce the replacement intervals by 2 because you're not using them as much, right? As long as you're keeping them clean. And to add to that point as well, you can also have a relief mask with 2 nasal masks if you have a pillow mask and one that's going on top of your nose. Sometimes the pillows can create irritation at the bottom of the nose. So switching out with a top mounted nasal mask like once a week or something like that can really help that area heal. And of course, if you have a relief mask that you're only using once a week, as long as you're keeping it clean, you can use that cushion in that mask for probably multiple years, right? Because you're not using it that often. So we do recommend having a relief mask to help with your CPAP therapy and help with irritations, and at last help if you get sick or have allergies. Okay, that concludes this video. Feel free to like this video or comment, subscribe. It helps us out a lot. Take care.